Hello everyone, Flanker here. This video is a breakdown of all three phases of Alpha 2 that comes along with detailed clarification for those who don't follow the project closely. Before we dive deeper into it, I'd like to make a quick announcement. I plan to start streaming shortly, and of course I plan to stream Alpha 2, so if you're looking for a cozy place to chill and hang out with me, follow me on twitch.tv/flankerua. And if it wasn't tempting enough, then I promise to show you this guy on stream. Alright, so what is the general idea behind Alpha 2? First of all, to ensure that the world can actually maintain at least 3,000 concurrent users to begin with, and to minimize the number of client crashes. Secondly, to test and balance the numerous in-game systems. And finally, to collect the feedback and bug reports from Alpha 2 testers. However, let's be honest, reporting bugs will not be the main priority for every single player, even though in a perfect world it kinda should be. But the last time I checked, it wasn't the case. Nevertheless, even just playing the game will help Intrepid to collect certain statistics and data. The Alpha 2 consists of 3 phases, and each one has specific goals, duration, and days when servers will be available. When it starts, oh man, just enjoy those sweet moments of launching the game for the first time and making your first steps in the world of Verra. Yeah. Anyway, as we can see, Phase 1 is primarily focused on the technical side of things and progression. I would probably expect the potential frequency of wipes to be the highest throughout this phase, which means that the testers might need to level multiple characters eventually. As long as leveling is an element of progression, then most likely there will be no XP or level boosts. Taking this fact into account, one of the things that I would definitely focus on is working out a strategy to power level as fast as possible in order to save time in future. I'd recommend you to consider this as well, or you can just subscribe to my channel and wait when I upload a video about that. Now let's take a closer look at the content available during the Phase 1 of Alpha 2. 55 square kilometers of the western and eastern Aelan Riverlands, Sandskull Desert and Vandegar Tropics, which is the equivalent of 21 square miles. My viewers from the US, you're welcome. Even though it's only 5% of the whole world map, it is still approximately the same size as the whole map in New World. Quite impressive, isn't it? Simply exploring the territory itself can take at least a couple of hours, and I don't know about you guys, but that's one of the things that I personally enjoy. Just going out there, exploring new locations, finding new creatures and resources, sounds like an adventure to me. Do you guys understand what I'm talking about, or am I the only one with this weird fetish? Then, we have 36 points of interest, which is pretty decent, and to be honest, I'm not even sure that the average player will have enough time to visit them all. Next, 4 seasons and a night cycle. This kinda goes without saying, but I'm still curious to see how the environment changes and how exactly it affects the gatherable resources and animals. Then, dynamic world populations and dynamic reward tables are essentially the core part of the algorithm that allows the spawn tables and loot tables of mobs to dynamically adapt to changes in the world state.
Those are super important when it comes to world, right? Because obviously one of the main focuses of Ashes of Creation is how the world changes according to the actions of the player or according to the actions of the system. And dynamic world populations and reward tables is those monster settings within the playable space changing based off of those world state predicates. So keeping in mind that that system being up and running is a very important part to feeling like the world is different.
Finally, 1 Grand Dungeon and 4 Pocket Dungeons. What's the difference between them? Basically, Grand Dungeons are larger and have more unique creatures. That's what we know so far. Now let's take a look at the content related to nodes. We start with 5 node locations that can progress up to stage 3 and turn into villages. Based on what we know at the moment, it's a matter of several days. Throughout those days, we will see them growing larger and new buildings, NPC and story arcs appearing. The dynamic road leveling system will also be present during Phase 1. It will play an important role by allowing the caravans to travel faster. Additionally, there will be at least 25 player commodities, which are basically the cargo that you deliver from one node to another by caravans. We'll talk about them in a moment. Next, there are several things that might be a bit confusing for some players. 4 service building plots, 5 default buildings, 8 active and 5 passive constructed buildings, service building expansion voting. So what does it all mean?
So yeah, there's a couple different types of service buildings, right? We have your default buildings that come pre-built with the node. Those are things like the town hall, the warehouse, the caravansary. And then there's also constructed service buildings. That's a lot of things like the artisanship buildings, businesses that the mayor actually has to initiate and choose and then voted on and built by the players. And then the different types of buildings there are between that is some buildings are active service buildings. So those are like, your artisanship businesses, like your different, your blacksmith, your tavern and all that. And then some buildings are passive buildings, and those are kind of provide passive benefits to the node. They don't have a reason to be visited, but they unlock the ability to upgrade your active service buildings through expansions. And then, so building expansions is the primary way you upgrade your buildings. And so to upgrade your building, you choose expansions, you build passive buildings to allow you to unlock those expansion slots. And this will basically specialize your service building down a path, and the building specialization will narrow down a specific path. So you might start as a generalized blacksmith building, and then you'll specialize towards maybe armor smithing, and then towards specifically like plate armor through the expansion tree.
Moving forward to another important group of interdependent systems, which combines mayorship, taxes, citizenship, and node currency. I know, we're still in alpha phase, but the government is already here to milk us with their taxes, right? Anyway, it's a great opportunity for guilds to start learning how to rule a node properly and which out of 56 tax categories are to be used. Oh damn, 56, as if we didn't have enough IRL, right? Keep in mind that the only type of elections available during phase 1 is voting, so we get to enjoy democracy at least for some time. Then we can also expect 24 mayoral commissions. Completing mayoral commissions will reward the node with node commodities, node-to-node reputation, mandates, or temporary buffs to buildings or zones. Meanwhile, players will receive experience, reputation, node currency, and other rewards. Finally, in this section, buy orders and 36 node resources, also known as node commodities, with tier 1 to tier 3 recipes will be available. Keep in mind that buy orders are not the same thing as mayoral commissions. Buy orders are the primary way for a node to generate node commodities that can be spent on construction, upgrades, and maintenance of service buildings. Mayors initiate them using gold from the node treasury, and players are rewarded with node currency and node reputation for fulfilling them. Now, speaking of races and archetypes, we start phase 1 with Vak and Kalar, while Empyrean Elves will be added a little bit later. And there will be 6 out of 8 archetypes available. In general, both alpha and beta phases may serve as a perfect playground to test and learn more about the archetypes, and eventually choose the one that fits your playstyle the best. Personally, I plan to start as a ranger, but most likely there will be more than enough time to enjoy all classes by the time Alpha 2 ends. Let me know in the comments which archetype you want to play the most, and let's see which one is the most popular. Now, 9 different weapons will be available in phase 1. I guess there is a typo on the screenshot, and they actually meant 30 skills per each weapon skill tree, which is another element of customization of your build. And here comes the spicy part, and we'll start with the flagging and corruption systems. Those of you who have never played MMOs with open world PvP and worry about the potential griefing, have no fear. Flanker here. I have an old but pretty detailed video about this topic, so if that's one of your concerns, a pop-up in the right upper corner should appear right now. Also, don't forget that it's gonna be alpha with wipes, and you should expect players doing all kinds of crazy shit. So don't worry, it's gonna be an entirely different story when it comes to release. Now, what those lawless zones are. Basically, they are open world areas with free PvP and no corruption. They are intended to be an Alpha 2 only feature to help test what will become OpenSea content. Lawless zones will be removed after OpenSea content is implemented. Next, we have Node Wars and Guild Wars, and personally, I can't wait to enjoy both. While everything is relatively self-explanatory when it comes to Guild Wars, Node Wars might offer a wider range of options.
War types are going to be pretty predicated on what they're actually delivering to the winners and losers, right? So this one's a territory control. The crux of what this does is you claim territory, which siphons the node XP from the nodes that from the POIs that you're winning these objectives at. It's also providing a luck buff there to prevent, or to, incentivize the players who win to go farm there, right? And generate more node XP for your node. We have other different types that we plan to have post state 2, like disabling services in the opposing node, siphoning gold, taking over mayorship temporarily.
Very cool. So there's a lot of different options that we intend to provide, obviously, for the war system. And this is one of the primary methods of player friction, right? So we want to keep that kind of compelling, interesting from a design perspective, which all of these different war types are intending to provide. And throughout Alpha 2, we'll be introducing additional node war event types as well.
Correct.
Last but not least in this section, Caravan PvP system. Many people were somewhat concerned after the live stream with caravans, and I think it's just another situation when people worry about things that are not actually a problem. I have a video about that as well, the link should appear right now in the right upper corner. So if you're one of those who gets anxious, thinking that your precious loot might get stolen by some random bastards, go ahead and check it out, hope it's gonna help. Alright, let's move forward to systems and economy, and start with flying, ground, and water mounts. When I joined the Ashes of Creation community, I was genuinely surprised to find out how much people care about the mounts, so I guess you guys are happy now. What I noticed here is that we got water mounts in phase 1, but aquatic mounts in phase 3. That makes me wonder what's the difference between them, because I always thought they are the same thing, which apparently is not the case. As long as aquatic mounts appear along with underwater combat and naval content, I guess they're just a better version of water mounts that are capable of something more than just swimming. But obviously, I'm not sure, and I'm curious what you guys think about it. Next, we have caravans, rafts, and 45 caravan components that are used basically to upgrade your caravan. We've seen that on one of the live streams, and I'm really happy that we're gonna be able to test it right away because that's one of the core systems. Then we have player trading, which is pretty obvious. And speaking of the mail system, let's listen to what Steven said about it.
We're still discussing how mailing system is going to work from an item standpoint. Obviously, we can't allow mailing to include any type of resource material or raw gatherable because those are, central to the gameplay and transiting through the caravan system and regional economic economic regions. But it may be possible to send completed crafted items like gear, equipment, stuff like that. But it's something we're still discussing.
My prediction is that they will allow sending the finished items such as gear and consumables, but obviously not the resources or glint, because it simply makes sense. Now, I guess those who plan to focus on gathering are very, very happy. Progression till level 25 in artisan professions will be available right away, along with 15 gathering tools and 33 gatherable resources. On top of that, we got fishing, hunting, and surveying system.
Yeah, so surveying is a way that players can check out an area for resources. Players can learn where resources are that are static and that grow back in the same location. But we'll also have resources in Ashes that can spawn anywhere. So surveying will help players locate those resources. So if they're looking for something specific, they can hunt them down. Surveying will also allow players to uncover hidden resources that players wouldn't be able to see with their naked eye. Another thing that surveying would provide is some of the information that we were talking about before, right? Like for instance, if you survey and inside of your survey area, there's plants. You might learn when that plant, what season that plant likes to grow in. You might learn whether it likes to be watered during the winter versus how it likes to be watered in the summer.
But it's not only the gatherers who should be happy. Those who intend to do processing and crafting get more than 400 processing recipes and more than 600 crafting recipes. I don't know about you guys, but I find these numbers pretty impressive. But as long as we can become Grandmeisters only within 2 artisan professions, I'm really curious what everyone plans to choose. So now, please stop for a second and let me know in the comments which 2 artisan skills do you want to master. Next, gear enchantments, item deconstruction, item repair, party and raid markers. Honestly, there isn't that much to talk about here, so let's take a look at the content section. Okay, more than 460 unique pieces of gear right from the start. Taking into account that the max level during the phase 1 is 25, not gonna lie, that's pretty fucking decent. I guess it's safe to assume that the number of unique items on release might exceed 1,000. Then we have the Node War Godspike event, which is obviously related to Node Wars that we have already discussed, but we didn't talk about 16 unique public events, which is interesting because so far we have only seen 2 of them on the live streams. Basically, public events are small-scale triggered events that exist within open areas of wilderness or points of interest. They can be triggered based on various predicates in the world, such as certain player activity, killing mobs, gathering, story arcs, etc. In addition to that, we expect almost 150 story-driven quests and commissions. That's not a bad start at all, in my opinion. One of the most intriguing parts here that sparks a lot of curiosity is 111 treasure maps. While it may be somewhat self-explanatory, Steven added some more context on Discord recently. Currently, I'm wondering whether it will also require certain utility skills of a mage or a rogue, or whether any class will be able to have fun with those maps. Finally, we will be able to fight 75 unique enemy creatures and 3 world bosses, each with its own distinct abilities, strengths, and weaknesses. Obviously, 3 is not that many, but at least we'll get a sneak peek at what we can expect in future updates. Overall, I would say there is plenty of content for Phase 1, especially if we take into account the fact that servers will be up only 3 days a week. I'm pretty happy about this, and what about you guys? Now let's take a look at Phase 2. The playable area gets a little bit bigger with the expansion of Sandskull Desert and Vandegaard Tropics, offering more opportunities for exploration. Additionally, we get more node-related systems and content added, such as developing nodes to level 4, node sieges, relics, new commission and buildings, vessel ship, and node death mechanics. On top of that, apart from the default democratic elections, we get a new economic election type. Basically, during this process, a mayor is elected via a blind bid auction where the citizen bidding the most money wins. And I'm really curious whether there will be an opportunity for citizens to contribute gold to the campaign of the candidate they prefer. Steven mentioned it in the past, but we don't know yet whether it will or will not be implemented. Also, freeholds are expected in Phase 2, and that makes me wonder whether they will increase the level cap or how exactly that will work. The thing is, owning a freehold requires a certain quest to be completed, and that quest requires a player to be level 50. So it's a little bit confusing. Next, Balloon Humans and Dunir Dwarves will be introduced in Phase 2, along with the 7th archetype, Rogue. At that point, I'm pretty sure that half of the server will be testing the Rogue and his stealth system. Not gonna lie, I will most likely be among those players as well. Future Rogues, identify yourself in the comments. Now, when it comes to new weapons, we get 4 more, and all of them are two-handed, so the total number of weapons available in-game increases to 13. Speaking of new systems in Phase 2, there are some pretty interesting updates here. First of all, several new things related to gear, such as tempering, gems and sockets, gear ascension, and repair kits. Tempering allows gear to be enhanced post-crafting. Gems and sockets provide additional waterfall stats to the items. And if you're not familiar with the waterfall stat system, well, let's clarify that.
A waterfall stat is a derivative of an attribute, right? So if dexterity is your attribute stat and a waterfall from dexterity is critical rate, that would be considered a waterfall stat, the critical rate.
And here's the full table with 6 core and 24 waterfall stats. I hope you understand now how it all works. Now, when it comes to repair kits, I guess their purpose is pretty obvious, but we don't really know what they mean by gear ascension, so if anybody knows it by any chance, please let everyone know in the comments. Then, we get our hands on siege vehicles, and now I'm going to reveal a huge secret to you guys from my insiders in Intrepid. Siege vehicles will be used during the castle sieges. Yes, you're welcome. Also, we will have a chance to test artisanship skill trees for different professions and try party gathering. On top of that, we get something that many people are very excited about, and that's animal husbandry. Speaking of leaderboards, we don't really know much about them, so I guess we'll just leave them for now. And finally, entrepreneurs of Verra will be able to start their businesses using player shops, and those of us who don't have a good enough credit score to buy a freehold will have an opportunity to get instanced housing. Last but not least, in Phase 2, we get story arcs for Riverlands and more content in Sandskull Desert. Speaking of other stuff in this section, I will let Steven explain it.
The dynamic world dungeons are going to be kind of the spaces that become available within those dungeons based off of certain world state predicates, right? That's another important thing to keep in mind. And NPC ambient behaviors, right? If I'm spawning a bunch of undead creatures like we saw in the Bard livestream within a farm, we want those undead creatures to do farming things, to rake leaves and dig ditches and do whatever farmers do. I don't know what farmers do, I'm not a farmer, but we need to have those ambient behaviors available for NPCs, and that's going to be landing sometime in Phase 2.
And now it's finally the time to take a look at Phase 3 that starts with 2 new zones, the Turquoise Sea and the Anvils. Same as in the previous phase, we get more unique node layouts, and nodes themselves can now progress to Stage 5. Additionally, the remaining military and divine election types become available as well. And when it comes to node atrophy, we only have some really old information that says that if node doesn't get enough XP from various player activities in its zone of influence, it may start dying slowly, with certain services getting disabled over time. The other two interesting systems that get implemented during this phase are node policies and node happiness.
And these are some of the things that citizens get to vote on that are proposed by their mayor. And it's a very short voting period, but nodes have a number of slots that they get to employ as government policies that are enacted and chosen by the mayor and voted on by the people. And certain policies get unlocked by certain happiness states of the factions within the node. And those happiness states are predicated across different achievements that can happen in the world, story arcs that get finished, bosses that get killed around you, new buildings that get constructed. Lots of different things can contribute to that happiness value. Number of citizens you've had leave, number of houses that it might have been foreclosed upon. Like, there's lots of different things that influence that. But when the happiness is met at a certain point, and even without that happiness, you can still have policies that you get to enact regardless. You may choose policies that do certain things for the node. And this is a big strategic decision that the node has to almost agree on, because it's voted on by the citizens within a short time period, but elected by the outstanding mayor. And when you deploy a policy, it confers benefits to the citizens, or to the area, or to specific buildings, or to the mayor, or there's a lot of different things that policies can influence. And policies exist within certain denominations. You have some policies that might be reflective of the culture that the node is representing, and you get access to those cultural policies. You have some policies that might become available because you've constructed a certain building type and now you've attracted a guild of NPCs that are weaponsmiths. You might have some policies that are social organizations representative. You only get to build one social organization, or temple, which religion does the node follow. All of these are customization points that the city gets to choose. And now you as a citizen get to identify the city that best aligns with your progression within the game and your game style and gameplay.
In Phase 3, we finally get the 4 remaining races, 3 new weapons, and the last summoner archetype that many people have been waiting for, probably for years. Another intriguing part here is the secondary archetype specialization for cleric and tank. I guess this will be the first time when we finally see the basics of augments. Speaking of systems, and taking into account that starting from Phase 3, Alpha 2 will be persistent till the release, we'll see the remaining systems getting added to the game. Guilds are expected to be fully functional, including the guild skills and guild freeholds. More PvP related content will be added as well, such as naval, aerial, and underwater combat, along with massive castle sieges. Not only will we have open world content in Phase 3, but also instance content, which means more fun for PvE players. Fans of gear customization will be happy, I guess, because the transmog and dying gear system will be implemented as well. Economic nodes will finally get auction houses that will turn them into regional trade centers. Also, starting from Phase 3, players will be able to choose one of the 6 religions in Verra, and that will let players walk a light or a dark path through their choice of quest lines and other actions. And finally, in addition to mounts, we also get pets that may be either purely cosmetic or combat paths. Keep in mind that combat paths act as an element of horizontal progression, not a vertical one. Unlike summoner summons, combat paths do not increase the player's power, but instead require a certain sacrifice from the owner. Now, when it comes to content, castles obviously appear in Phase 3, because players must test the castle sieges. We also get the content related to the Turquoise Sea, as that's one of the new areas, and in general, the longer Alpha 2 lasts, the more new territories we might expect with each update. For those of you who didn't know that, Phase 3 is expected to be at least 1 year long, but realistically speaking, we should expect it to be longer than that.
These are our goals for phases 1, 2, and 3. And again, these goals can change. We will be talking with you as we go through playing these periods, these phases. Our development updates will start to change their focus. and will be about playing the game with the players, going through that experience, talking about the feedback we're getting, talking about the testing, talking about what's in active development, and showing some of that 6-week cadence content delivery as part of those live streams as well. So this is going to be a little bit of a shift from what historically has been the purview of our company's public face to the community, and now is going to look like us playing the game with the players and talking about the things that we're doing with the game in a live fashion setting.
And as we go into each of these phases, we will, like, October 25th, we're going to have information prior to that will give you kind of an understanding of what we're coming into that phase with. And then as we have updates, we'll have patch notes, we'll have information in regards to the bigger updates. You'll probably see those in a little bit more of a different fashion, maybe some video formats, maybe some live streams. So you'll be seeing a lot of this stuff in more detail as we move forward in each of the phases.
Yes.
I hope this video gave you enough information about the forthcoming Alpha 2. If not, feel free to ask your questions in the comments below. As usual, I would appreciate your likes, dislikes, and subscription to my channel. I am Flanker, and I'll see you soon.